It is 1:01 p.m. Would you please do the roll call, Aaron, and then the public involvement announcement?
Of course, Member Huntington. Can you guys hear us online?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. I know Terry's here. Member Duber for Member Lindemood. Here. Member Alini.
Present.
You for Dawad.
Present.
Thank you. Member Boland.
Here.
Thank you. Member White.
Here.
Member Coy.
Here.
Member Keegan.
Present.
Thank you. Member Kohlhaas.
Here.
Member Rudolph is excused. And Member Babb.
Here.
Okay, you do have quorum, sir. Public participation and virtual participation guideline. Welcome to the AMAS Technical Advisory Committee meeting. Public comments welcome and encouraged with 3 minutes given to each speaker. After the committee discusses each item, members of the public will be invited to comment. Housekeeping items for virtual attendees, please keep your camera off unless you're speaking. For those attending by phone, press *6 to mute or unmute. And AMAS committee meetings are audio recorded and posted to our AMAS webpage and the YouTube page. Real quick, we have made a little slight adjustment to our agenda, as you can see. There's some more detail posted on the agenda, maybe than what we have done in the past, and it's reorganized a little. We recently attended an ADA training. I don't know if we call it training, but an ADA meeting on the municipality's web pages and the ADA requirements that are coming up on the federal requirements. And during that, it was part of the conversation that we need to make some changes to AMAT's process as well to help with accessibility. So what you see before you is a lot more information on here. So when people are actually having it read to them, that it tells them what is going on. So they don't have to rely on visual cues as much, plus some other changes. So you will see those changes coming to the AMAT's website, to the AMAT's documents. You'll probably be getting contacted by Christine if you are an AMAT's funded project to be making some changes to your AMAT's or to your project website as well. So just as a heads up that that'll be coming along. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Aaron. The agenda that I saw online was just from the website or from the email. I didn't see the PDF for it, so I don't have this exactly right before me, so I might be a little bit more reliant on walking through today's agenda than usual.
Okay.
So item number 3 is approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion for approving the agenda?
Move to approve.
Moved by Member Babb,
Second.
second by Member White. Any discussion or changes that are needed? Okay, are there any objections to approving the agenda? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. Next up on the agenda are the meeting minutes for March 5th, 2026. Do we have a motion for approving the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes as prepared.
Moved by Member Kohlhaas. Second.
Second.
Second by Member Babb. Are there any discussion or changes or amendments needed to the minutes? Okay, hearing no changes, are there any objections to approving the minutes? Okay, hearing none, the March 5th, 2026 minutes are approved. Moving on then to item 5A, the ARRC Transit Asset Management TAM target recommendations. So we'll be managing that for us today.
That'll be me real quick. So as you may recall, every year we are required to adopt asset management targets for public transportation providers within the AMAS boundary. We've already done it for the Public Transportation Department for the municipality of Anchorage, and now we have before us the Alaska Railroad Corporation TAM targets. So as an MPO, we are required to adopt them or set our own targets, support them or adopt our own targets. Historically, AMATS has supported the railroad in their targets. AMATS itself doesn't manage or oversee any of the railroad infrastructure, the rolling stock, the equipment, the facilities, or the track. So we typically just work with the railroad programming projects into the tip to support them and then support them in their asset management targets. So the updated 2026 targets are before you today. We also have posted the asset management document provided to us by the Alaska Railroad, and staff's recommendation is to recommend to the policy committee adoption of the 2026 ARRC TAM targets. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? Are there any comments from the public? Okay, seeing none in the room or online, what is the will of the committee?
I'll move to recommend to the policy committee adoption of the 2026 Alaska Railroad Corporation TAM targets.
Moved by member Dubert,
Second.
seconded by member Boland. Are there any discussion or amendments? Hearing none, are there any objections to approving the motion? Okay, hearing none, the motion is approved. So move on then to item 5B. Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee Vision Zero letter.
This will be Emily.
Hi, everyone. Emily Weiser. I'm the non-motorized coordinator for AMETS, as well as staff to the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. So this letter, you first saw the previous version back in October. That went to the policy committee on your recommendation, and they suggested bringing it back to the BPAC for some changes that they requested. We had thought of just bringing it directly back to the policy committee, but it's been a while now. The BPAC didn't have quorum at their next meeting, and then their following meeting was just in February, and then we didn't have time on the March agenda for these committees. So since it's been a while and there have been some changes, and this is a highly relevant topic, we figured we'd bring it back to the TAC for you all to take a look at this new version and see if you have any comments, or else recommend that the policy committee approve it to be sent to the recipients. This is one of those cases where it comes, the letter will be from the BPAC to the recipients unless the policy committee decides to adopt it and, plan it themselves as well. But as it stands, it is from the BPAC to the recipients. And so that is before you now.
Okay, thank you, Emily. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? Okay, are there any comments from the public? Okay, I see no hands in the room or online. What is the will of the committee?
For discussion, I move to recommend that the policy committee approve and adopt the AMATS Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee letter, and that it be sent to the recipients.
So moved by member Bab. Do we have a second?
I'll second for discussion.
Seconded by member Kohlhaas. What discussion, any discussion or amendments to the motion?
I guess I have a question. I probably should have asked it first. Who are the recipients?
Me and the DOT Central Region Director.
Oh.
Which I guess in this case would be the Deputy
Commissioner.
Commissioner. Chief. Which does put me in kind of an odd situation where, I mean, given how we typically do with these, yeah, it does raise the question, do I recuse myself? If it's a unanimous voting, I don't see an issue with that. If it's going to be by voice, then maybe it makes sense to recuse myself in the vote. With most of these letters, it typically is pretty easy just to recommend that it gets sent to us. It's not decided on any response. So I don't see a problem personally from voting to have a letter be sent to me. So it's not like decisions being made on my end necessarily to, I guess the thing that you added in, member Bab, to have it adopted is a little different than just have it sent to me, though. So,
Chair, our last time you did recuse yourself from this, and let the committee discuss. It's up to you how you want to handle it. If you want to recuse yourself from the voting, that's fine. You can still help run the voting if you're okay with that, as long as you know what you can do.
yeah, I guess given that you incorporated that part into it, does raise a question of, do I want this to, yeah, can I really speak to that piece if I'm in the response? So, so yeah, I think I do need to recuse myself of that conversation voting. Is there an issue if I run the discussion? Maybe a little bit?
No, there's no issue on my end. We have it on the record that you recuse yourself from voting, so you should be fine in helping to run the voting itself.
Okay, sounds good. Are there any discussion or comments?
Just I have a general comment, just, we've been meeting with DOT routinely with the topic of the Vision Zero forum, and we're all looking for opportunities for safety. So further hearing from AMATS and BPAC on being informed to hear more voices, I think it's just beneficial.
Other comments from the committee or any discussion, I guess, we're on the discussion stage, discussion amendments.
I guess I would just second kind of what Melinda brought up there. Appreciate the partnership here between DOT and the municipality and working towards these Vision Zero goals. And also thanks to BPAC for revisiting the letter and continuing to track these efforts here and inquire about the status.
Are there other member discussion or amendments? Okay, hearing none other, are there any objections to approving the motion?
If you're recusing yourself, like, forgive me, point of order. We probably need to do a roll call.
Okay.
You already did public comment on this.
Mhm.
Didn't you?
I heard
Yeah,
okay, sorry.
yeah. I was like, no, we already did public comment. We're on the.
Okay, good.
It moved pretty fast.
Yeah.
In and out, no response. Okay, let's do it. Let's do a voice call, I guess, a roll call on this. So member Bab,
Yes.
member Kohlhaas,
Yes.
member Keegan,
Yes.
I'm recusing myself. Member White,
Yes.
member Boland,
Yes.
member Dawood,
Yes.
member Alimi,
Yes.
member Duber,
Yes.
and member Umatum.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That motion passes. And we will move on to the next item on the agenda. Item 5C, the 32nd Avenue project, considering a one-way option. Is that yours, Aaron?
Yeah, I'll do a quick intro and then it'll be up for discussion. So this item is before you. I remind you that at the March 19th Policy Committee meeting, project team provided a presentation on the status of the project. They also came to the Technical Advisory Committee and provided a status on it as well. And in that presentation, there was discussion about a one-way option being looked at as part of the project. And there was a request from the project team, what do they do with this? Do they look at it or not? There's also discussion with the policy committee members, including a comment from a policy committee member that they should look at a one-way option as part of this project. So this item is before you today for that discussion. As a reminder, it was an informational item at the policy committee and TAC last month, so no action could actually be taken on it. So it is before you today for action to be taken on whether or not a one-way option should be looked at as part of the 32nd Avenue project. And if a traffic study is required as part of that, because there was some discussion about whether a traffic study is needed. So it's before you today for that. I can help answer any questions if you have them. Thanks.
Thank you, Aaron. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? Looks like Terry has his hand raised. Go ahead.
Yeah, I've got
Yeah, my question is, was this project, I'm still new to the AMAT, so don't know the history of it, but was this project ready to go? Is this one that was ready to start construction this year, and will we delay it if we vote to extend this or have another study done on this one?
Speak to that one.
Okay, go ahead, Member Boland.
So this project's in the preliminary design and environmental phase, and so we're currently working through the NEPA process. The proposal here to look at a one-way wasn't included in the public meeting that went forward for the project, so it was an alternative that was presented to the public as part of the environmental process. So if it is included, there's some schedule impacts and additional costs that would go into evaluating the one-way and then also presenting that to the public.
Do we have any idea on how far out that schedule goes? Does it really delay it like a year or just a month or two, or are we talking like a major impact?
I think you're probably talking a 6-month timeline, just in big round numbers. We'd be looking at an amendment to the PSA, the consultant contract that we have in this situation, some design time, and then also the public meeting. So.
Okay. Thank you.
On that, does the inclusion or exclusion of a traffic study impact that at all?
I think that would fit within the timeline that we've got there. We've got members from the design team here. They may be able to answer some of those questions there. I think at the end of the day, when we're going to go present this to the public, some idea of what the change in traffic looks like, so that we can explain that to folks in the neighborhood of, how folks may reroute through the neighborhood would be appropriate. So I don't know if anybody from the design team has anything to add.
As far as the traffic analysis being the reason for the delay, really the amendment to the PSA contract would be the main reason for the delay. And we already have to do that where the public involvement changes, regardless of whether the traffic analysis is part of that.
Can you state your name for the record?
Oh, I'm Travis Holmes, the DOT project manager.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Travis. Thanks, Member Boland. Are there other, thanks, Member Umatum, for your question. Are there other questions or comments from the committee? Go ahead, Member Clark.
Background, PM&E has been involved in this corridor back when we started the project, Lois Drive and West 32nd Avenue, and it was actually Pathway project. It was focused on non-motorized facilities. Originally, it was focused on Lois, and then recognizing that there's congestion and Aquarian School, as well as other factors, and wanting a linked pedestrian mode in there as well. So from our background, we're looking at a lot of different factors. And I don't know how much we want to get into this now. Is this my time to do this? Okay. So one of the most critical piece I think is worth noting is Anchorage Fire Department, and as a stakeholder consideration and functional consideration. For life safety, PM&E spoke with Fire Marshal Brian Dean, and what they noted about Anchorage Sands apartment complex in the more narrow segment, where it's only 30-foot of right-of-way, is they consider that a high-risk occupancy because it's not sprinkled and there's no fire alarms. They also have a history of responding to multi-alarm fire events, which includes multiple response units dispatched. From their perspective, they need a minimum range of 26 feet road width. They also noted that 2 lanes allow adequate room for one setup, and then the other fire apparatus to be able to pass through. And sometimes you have, again, multiple fire apparatus tending to the fire response. The other thing that PM&E has consulted with as far as another stakeholder is our street maintenance. 32nd is currently on their school route haul out or snow haul out list. So that is part of their normal operations. And for them to manage their snow hauling needs, they look to having 2 lane widths to support side-by-sides haul off. That's the dump truck and the blower working side by side in tandem. You know, some of the other considerations to think about too is, you know, when we were looking at local roads in particular, is all the service accommodations that happen on a local roadway, with having kind of the highest access need for maintenance vehicles, delivery, postal, solid waste vehicles that require corridor maneuverability on local roads. So when you have vehicles stopped, having more room provides, you know, movement within that corridor. But the other thing that I wanted to point out, going back to the design study report, PM&E with CRW followed the context sensitive solutions process. And you know, it's recognized that it's a challenging road because of the varying right-of-way widths. But also, one of the things that they also looked at is how the Sands apartment building impacts safety, as far as introducing a non-motorized facility right in front of where there's full frontage driveways that have direct pullout and backing out. It you know, poses a potential risk or hazard and conflict points. So in the alternatives that were looked at, they considered a pathway from the west side on the north side, and then crossing the street, and then routing along the south side of the roadway from the segment that's in front of the apartment building to avoid that potential conflict. So I will also note that the report also notes that a one-way alternative was considered. So one of the biggest factors that MOA traffic engineering expressed concern about was compliance for one-way streets in the neighborhood. So that was also heard before the Planning and Zoning Board or Commission, and they also noted that there was a lot of attention of looking at alternatives, considering all of the constraints and all of the factors, and making sure that we have adequate roadway configurations. So I just wanted to share some of that history. For example, in the planning staff report, the project was noted, the project had initially considered a one-way road option, but there were concerns with traffic circulation and compliance. And one-way road option was not analyzed as a cross-section. So it was screened out. But I think the bigger thing that's coming to mind is really how the Anchorage Fire Department views this corridor and needing adequate space for life safety response.
Okay, thank you, Member Collatz, for that helpful background. Do we have other member comments or questions?
Taylor has raised up online.
Go ahead, Member Keegan.
Hi, everyone. Melinda, thanks for that background. I appreciate it. My understanding is similar to yours with the fire concerns and the snow maintenance concerns. And I think I have one question, which is if we what are the implications if we just did the traffic study and not the full, I guess, like, is there a way that we can reduce the amount of delays with like a one or an either or in the proposal? Or is it basically like, if we're going to change the contract, the PSA, like, should we just do both the traffic study and a full exploration of the one way? And that's a question for DOT.
I think in general, it'd be going back for that public meeting is probably the long lead item that we've got here. And so it's, I don't think the traffic study necessarily holds things up on this. It's that the alternative wasn't provided as part of the public comment period.
I see. Okay. Okay. So I think I started to say two things at once. Thank you, Luke. The thing I do want to say is I hear a lot of what the concerns are, and I personally do not believe that the one way is going to come out as the top preferred alternative. But in our current environment I think that there's just some distrust in government at all levels. I think that there is a lot of value in taking a look at this and potentially delaying this project and just making sure that we are being responsive to the community who's requesting this. I have some AMATS non-motorized projects, which we have seen come to the Technical Advisory Committee that have been delayed, sometimes years, due to the same exact thing. And in the end, it has made those projects more defendable. And so I do think that there is like a balance of, okay, are we wasting resources pursuing something that is technically we already know is not the best option? Yeah, I think we are doing that. But is the trade-off value and building trust with our local community worth that? Yeah, I do think it is worth that. So I think that I will be voting to take a look at this one-way option, understanding that it's really frustrating from a technical standpoint to have to go through a process when people as experts in their field are saying this isn't a great option from the very beginning. So this is difficult, and I really appreciate everyone's work, but I do think ultimately in the public sector, we do have a duty to make sure we are being transparent to the community, and we have stronger projects in the end when we do that. So thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, Member Keegan. Other questions or comments, Member White?
Aaron, I should know this. The funding for this project. What's it coming from?
AMATS.
Okay.
STBG, it's an AMATS project. So decisions for the project need to come through the AMATS process.
Okay.
It's not a unilateral decision by DOT or the municipality of Anchorage on what gets looked at and what doesn't get looked at. Just to remind everybody, policy committee is the ultimate authority for AMATS funded projects. And I'll just note on my end, it looks like this might have been missed at some point because I don't remember anything coming forward that a one-way was not going to be looked at as part of this project. So maybe in the future, we can have better collaboration with the MPO on AMATS funded projects.
Go ahead, Member Hallhouse.
I believe we did review it with AMATS.
When
Before
when
we
was the
went,
decision?
before we went out to the RFP,
It didn't come before the TAC and policy committee for
maybe not, but I
decision.
think,
That's what I'm talking
okay,
about.
okay. So maybe not
Staff,
formalized.
Yeah,
I think
if there is
we
a
were
decision that's being reached by
maybe
somebody at the muni
talking
saying,
with the coordinator.
yeah, you're not gonna look at this, it needs to come before the TAC and policy committee for approval.
I'd also like to further note, it's not necessarily that it was never looked at. And thank you for the question, Mr. White, because I don't mean to confuse the difference between when this was a bond-funded project, under PMNI's administration, because it did start over. So in respect to the process, I'm only bringing this up for context. But I think looking at kind of like what did change, even if we do study it, you still have the same constraints. You still have the same life safety considerations. Hearing broadly from Anchorage Fire Department, to me, it is a constrained area. Sands apartment building likely has non-conforming rights since it was built probably before before the 70s. So I don't think there's a lot of new things on how are we going to be able to reallocate that given that footprint need that the fire department needs.
Thanks, Member Hallhouse. Member Bad?
I just wanted to say thank you for the background information, the additional information on this project. None of these items came up at the last meeting, so I was hearing a lot of concern from members of the public, members of this committee about pedestrian safety and various reasons that a one-way might be considered for this project. And which is, I was the one who asked that it be added to the agenda so that the policy committee could take action one way or the other. and provide some solid direction to the project team. I think this information is information that it would be good for the policy committee to have as well. So I will be asking if we can forward this discussion to the policy committee so that we can have that discussion again with all of this information, and the public is aware of the decisions that were made and why they were made and what the considerations are, including potential delays in the project. Because I think we all are not interested in delaying another project. So that was the intent in adding this to the agenda. And I hope that the committee members will support me in my wish to move this discussion further to the policy committee for their deliberation.
And I guess on that, it's already on our agenda, which means that it is already going to be on their agenda. So they will already have the discussion on this. I think what's before us is, do we recommend anything? Do we recommend that policy committee direct the project team to include a one-way? Do we make any recommendation of what they do, or just request that they consider all of the documentation and the points being made, and that it be on the record so that a policy decision can be made, and that there can be clarity in the process that the decision-making body of AMATS, the policy committee, has made a decision with regards to the one-way, whether it proceed or not, so that it is a decision that's made. So that, as Member Keegan mentions, if in a year or two people ask what happened to the one-way, to be able to point to the policy committee decided based on prior analysis that was performed that it's not moving forward, feels a lot more defensible than how it wasn't even considered as part of this process. It was part of the other process, but what do we have to like clarify that and refine that is part of what's in my mind and my question. One thing that I will say is that study that you mentioned was before my time, so I wasn't aware of it. I wasn't aware of all of those decisions. So this process we're going through now was the first that I had actually heard of the project. And I have been somewhat shocked that the one way was not even ever like considered something that could be considered going forward. So it was a huge shock.
Considered.
It was a huge shock for me that, oh, we can't even look at a one way. This is like the beginning of a process. Like, why can't we even look at this? Was my reaction. So hearing that something had happened before I came on gives me a little bit more comfort that, oh, okay, I'm not just being blindsided by the fact that we can't look at this. There has been a lot of work going into it. But given that
as part of a separate project,
part of
still
project,
there was some consideration. So
Yeah.
that previous project, it sounds like, informed this one.
so
But-
yeah, I just want to voice it. That's kind of what I've been feeling like struggling with. It seems like a pretty straightforward, simple process, and I've been struggling with just my own emotions on like what's going on with this small, supposedly tiny, like 32nd Avenue project that we can't even, so, but I appreciate all the background. That is extremely helpful. So thank you for coming with that information.
Thank you. I'd like to emphasize one more piece, just because as it did go through PZC, and there was a resolution 2021-009, so that might provide additional context. And, it acknowledges that the petitioner worked closely with the public, including these residents immediately affected by these changes. Petitioner carefully considered and put a lot of thought into the most effective design possible with the parameters of the corridor. So there was a lot of recognition of all of the constraints. It did identify in the staff report that it was, a consideration for the one-way, which was screened out because of these other broader factors.
Maybe one question on that, was a one-way only on the narrower section that was 30-foot in right-of-way considered, or was it one way the entire length all the way to Lowit?
I don't think it was described exactly. The big focus from the traffic engineering department was compliance. They felt that it would be hard to be assured that people wouldn't just try to get onto Minnesota from 32nd if it was a one-way coming this way.
So for all the other pieces though, was it looked at? I mean, now in the traffic engineering department, we've got one-way streets all the time and, you know, if we were concerned people wouldn't, I would say the people that live there, they should know what it is. Maybe they'll have occasional visitor, but it's a narrow road, so I sure would hope that way people driving that would be able to know that this was a one-way. So I'm not sure. I can see part of that, but that's not reason enough for me from a traffic standpoint to feel of the same opinion. So, I mean, but the emergency standpoint, that's different.
That's why I thought that is the
Yeah.
larger piece for
The snow maintenance standpoint, those are
definitely.
those carry a lot more water to me than how drivers might make a bad choice because anyway, it's just my thoughts on those pieces. So it looks like member Keegan has her hand raised.
Thank you. I have a question, which is there a way to make the existing language more robust in the current process? Like basically just pull it along and describe it more wholly, so it wouldn't require a full change of consultant effort, but just better communication about how we got to where we are. More visible information.
So are you saying that instead of doing a new public meeting, instead of including it as an option, if just as this is getting presented, there is conversation about this is why the one-way was not considered?
I think we could probably work with the project team to, maybe incorporate some of the past decisions that were made into maybe the final version of the environmental document to kind of foster that trust a little bit and kind of walk through some of the reasoning behind this wasn't, or why this wasn't evaluated as an alternative in the NEPA process so that we have that. Any issues with that?
Can do that.
Okay.
It sounds like that could be done either.
That sounds awesome. Maybe it can start there, and we can revisit if a larger analysis is necessary based on how robust the summary or whatever information is brought along in the current phase. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Member Keegan. Are there other questions or comments from the committee?
I think just a comment in that on future projects, it sounds like we have some work to do on the clarity of the process itself related to projects that might start with the Muni and then move to AMATs and decision points on those projects. If a project does switch from one funding source to another, I feel like there's some muddiness in where those decisions were made, and maybe that's a conversation for PM&E and AMATs to have as aside after separate from this project entirely, so that we don't find ourselves in this situation again.
Thanks, Member Bab. Are there other questions or comments from the committee?
I think in terms of decision making here by AMATs, I think the timing of this one's unfortunate with where we're at in the already having a public meeting on this one. But I think this is a good discussion venue for these types of scope elements for the project. We do make lots of different small to large scope element changes just in the development of any project. So knowing where that is, I don't know, there's a balance there, right, of how often we revisit scope elements here as a committee and going through the policy. So yeah, it would be happy to participate in some of those discussions. Make sure we're
Okay.
Yeah, and agreed. I think that it's important to know when it's appropriate to make those changes. It feels like at this stage in the project, it's better to take these sorts of questions into consideration now rather than at 65% or later, for sure. So that was what I was hoping to do with this, is to address these questions now so that there aren't further questions later on down the road after a alternative has been selected.
Just follow up. Yeah, the earlier we can have these conversations in the project delivery, the better off and the easier it is to catch changes like this. And, you know, we can go back and revisit this. I mean, this is something the project team would be happy to do if that's the decision from policy. But there are cost and schedule impacts when we make changes, and further down the line, the bigger those costs and schedule impacts always tend to be.
Yeah, that's true. Better to catch those now sooner.
Sorry, we're just in the dark today.
Looks like we're not moving quite enough to keep the lights on. There you go. One other thing that I also did want to speak to on the question here of a traffic study. 32nd Avenue is a low volume local street. It does have the school, which right now is directing their pickup drop off to be westbound, one-way westbound activity. And it has cleared up some of the concerns that used to exist on this street from a traffic standpoint. Looking at Minnesota Drive itself, there's a left turn lane to head westbound. And so if a one-way was to be looked at from a traffic standpoint, I and my staff have no issues with a one-way westbound, and don't feel like a traffic study would be needed. Just, we could even write a quick one-page, here's why this would work. Anybody that's turning right, eastbound right turn is the only movement allowed eastbound at Minnesota, could go 1 block south to 33rd with minimal out of direction travel. It's only in the neighborhood of 50 peak hour trips. It's not sending a lot of traffic to 33rd. So from a, I guess my initial reaction when we had this conversation was that it was going to need a huge traffic study and it was going to lay things months. And that felt a little bit overkill from a traffic standpoint. I think you're right from the public standpoint, going out to the public. That's really where the time frame comes into it. But if it would be helpful for us to provide anything with regards to a traffic study to address this, to talk about how we minimize wrong direction travel if it is a one-way, all of those things we would be happy to contribute and to help with, if that's what ends up happening. If it goes into where the policy committee decides not to consider one way and uses the documentation and all of the explanation, especially from a emergency and snow maintenance standpoint, then that's very understandable from our perspective. But I just want to reiterate from a traffic standpoint, and those of us in the traffic engineering department right now don't consider there to be unreconcilable issues with a westbound one-way on this project. So if there's reasons to not do a one-way, in our minds, it's not a traffic safety issue, because we do have some concerns of having a narrow sidewalk being the only thing that's provided along this segment. If it is a two-way, just with how narrow everything is. Granted, 32nd Avenue isn't like the backbone of our network in this area, but the Minnesota INL project was looking at potentially having a crossing. And if we put a signalized pedestrian crossing right here at 32nd, and we don't have commiserate pedestrian and bicycle connectivity, it's just a gap in the network. So those other things are far enough in the future that I don't know how it's going to turn out. But those are some of the things that I guess were on our mind as we thought about some of the benefits of different options on 32nd. So however, what we can do to provide help on this, we would be happy to. Any other questions or comments? Go ahead.
Chair, I've got one more comment from the fire department, because I thought it was interesting. They said it's not so much that it's a one-way, it was just all about the space and the width that they needed. They said if it was a one-way, they would do anything during the response, going backwards against, one way for the response. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So it's,
Do you, if I ask a technical question, I don't know if you'd be able to answer this for the fire department, but would any paved surface that's constructed properly to support the stands for the fire truck, would that work? Or is it that they specifically need 26 feet of roadway?
I asked that question and they said if there was a side path, they wouldn't view that as the adequate space that they need. They also said that they need not just only for passing another unit, but they also needed maneuverability and turnaround space. So it didn't see that a side path would be part of that equation, part of that distance. That's a good question.
That's an interesting question, because that, in my mind, means that pretty much any roadway in the muni is going to need to be 26 feet in width, period.
Local roadway.
Right. I mean, it almost eliminates that one lane, one way road from our inventory, just due to fire safety. Am I reading that?
I mean, when I looked at the DSR and they looked at all of the different informing documents, including OSNHP, that was one of the items that they listed as a local road has 2 lanes. So I don't know.
It
I
could
can't
be-
answer more than that.
Could be next to a tall building like that one. And it's next to a single family home. The likelihood of needing that sort of fire response. So, not to put words in their mouth, but I can see how that's a nuance that needs to be accounted for.
And agreed, absolutely. I just think it's important that the community understands that it's a limitation in how narrow roads might be able to get due to
Right.
those considerations. So, like I was saying earlier, the reason this is on the agenda is because I asked for it to be here. I had 2 main big concerns, well, 3. One, that we did not provide any direction to the project team, and they left uncertain as to how to receive the input that they had gotten at the PC. And then also the concerns I was hearing from traffic about pedestrian safety and other safety issues with the 2-way there in that particular piece of the roadway. But then also the project delays, like if we did suggest adding this as an alternative, then would it delay construction? Maybe it would delay design, but is it also going to push the construction timeline out? So those were the 3 questions I had. I feel like most of that has been addressed. With maybe the exception of the timeline, it sounds like it would have an impact on the construction timeline, or just the design, finalizing the design.
So the 6-month delay, does that impact where it lands with our short construction season here in Alaska? I don't know, Travis, do you have the date of? Okay. Do you have the date of when we were planning on bidding this one?
Early 28.
Early 28, okay, so it's probably late 28 or fall 20.
Yeah.
Fiscal year 27 or 29 then, yeah. Does sound like we're kind of on the verge of missing that construction season as it is, so.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Yeah, I for one will feel a lot more comfortable with where this project is with a policy decision on it. So I appreciate you putting it on the agenda, Member Bab, so that we could talk about it and it can be documented and then it can be clear. So when public hear about it, they're not having these same discussions that we're having now and wondering about it, but there's a lot more clarity. And I apologize that I wasn't up on all the work that was done previously.
In fact, my surprise was that it was really a pathway project. It was about non-motorized, so.
Which I guess is a surprise that on this short segment, we're not really putting in a pathway. Kind of is a little bit of a shock from a traffic safety and multimodal priority perspective. I mean, a 5-foot sidewalk is like, yeah, so.
And we're
anyway.
putting sharrows in.
I mean, if it's something that, yeah, anyway, I don't wanna go there.
Much detail, I'm sure. Okay, guys.
I have to defer to the project team because I understand there are non-motorized improvements in this brief stretch here in front of the apartment building.
Yeah,
5-foot sidewalk adjacent
Yeah,
to,
just to address that, there are non-motorized improvements in Clear West, so for Aquarian, we currently have a pathway in our alternative and a sidewalk on the south. And then in the 30-foot section, it's a sidewalk on the south side.
5-foot
Yeah. 5 foot.
attached sidewalk. What's the crossing look like to go from the south to the north?
Currently, just west of the east Aquarian driveway.
Marked crosswalk,
Crosswalk.
school crosswalk. Okay. So. Yeah. Okay, other questions or comments from the committee? Okay, are there any comments from the public?
Comment, Mr. Chair.
Okay, go ahead, state your name and we'll give you.
Kevin
2 minutes.
Lilly, Public Works Director. I want to start out by saying that I stand fully in support of Member Holhouse's comment. I say that because she has been kind of a standout, standing alone on this issue, it seems like from the discussion here. So I just want to express my support for her as Director of Public Works. Responsibility for the implementation of projects like this, while they're shared, excuse me, while it's shared with DOT, rests largely in my umbrella. So I just want to make that point. We've got a lot of discussion both here and across the city with respect to DOT projects and MWA projects regarding delays and the need to put things in the ground and make work happen. That's one of the reasons that I think Ms. Kohlhaas made those comments, and I remain concerned, as others have expressed, that delays, a 4-month or 6-month delay, almost certainly means the loss of winter construction. We know how project creep happens. We've seen project creep on Bernard Road. We've lost people on Bernard Road. We're very likely going to lose year on fire week. Valid discussions on those, but we're going to lose years on those. We'll probably lose a year on this one if this moves forward. I 100% respect comments made regarding the idea of moving this forward so that it can be showed that it was fully vetted to whatever degree it needs to be vetted. However, I think that when you have technical experts and operational experts like street maintenance and the fire marshal and others saying that this presents a significant challenge for how they do operations, respect to public safety and transportation, I think that those things, those comments should bear a lot of weight in decisions that this body makes. I know that I'm still not exactly sure, and I don't need an answer as to the impetus for this one-way idea. I know that some of it is circled around or cycled around the vehicle transportation issues and the congestion created at the school. I think my understanding is that the school, through voluntary communications with the parents, has solved at least a large part of that by suggesting that parents leave the site westbound. So it's eliminated some of that congestion going east. So I think that the school has worked to solve a problem. Maybe it's not a perfect solution, but they've worked to solve it. And what is on the table now, if this were to proceed and be implemented, would be a solution that maybe is in part intended to address a problem that might occur 2 hours a day, 175 school days a year. But the solution is a 365-day impact on the residents who live in that area. And I think that's worth consideration of the body. And I guess the last thing I would offer is that there's a comment in the chat. I don't want to call up Mr. Telford, but he put the comment in the public chat, and I think at some point that question and other questions should be looked at. When should these discussions come up? At what point should projects be scoped and the decision made that they move ahead? And what is the role of AMATS, the technical committee and the policy committee, in directing the detailed project level design decisions on a project? With that, I'll sit down. Thank you.
Thank you, Kent. I do see that Brandon has his hand up. Brandon, go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I just wanted to express a little bit of concern about the discussion I heard today. It seemed to have been applied that there's safety concerns with a low volume local roadway only having a 5-foot sidewalk on one side. And I wanted to, just express the concern. We're going through the process right now of updating the design criteria manual. We're looking at ways to sort of bring the cost of capital improvement projects down. And I think that some of that discussion has included the idea that in some cases on low volume local roadways, it's appropriate to have only one sidewalk instead of 2. And it may also be appropriate to not have a sidewalk depending on the context. So the discussion seemed to imply at least that this low volume local roadway having only a 5-foot sidewalk on one side is an unsafe condition. And I just wanted to bring that to the attention that those comments are kind of contradictory to maybe some of the other things that are being done, including some subdivisions that have come in and requested variances from sidewalks and gotten those approved.
Can you state your name for the record, please, Brandon?
Yeah, I'm Brandon Telford, the engineering manager for PM&E. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Brandon. Looks like there's another hand online, and then we'll come here. Sarah Prescott, please state your name, and you've got 3 minutes.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Sarah Prescott, and I'm speaking just for myself today. I lived in this neighborhood. I can see my old house on, the planning maps. I lived in this neighborhood for 10 years, and so I'm very familiar with the traffic situation that happens here. And I'm not exactly sure I can envision the one-way and how it would assist necessarily. I want to see the whole thing, and I appreciate the comments that have been made about can we see the studies, and make sure that we've gone through that process. But as someone who for 10 years was in and out of this neighborhood, that left turn lane from Minnesota also gets really backed up at school time. And so I don't know that it eases any congestion there if we're doing one-way westbound on 32nd Avenue, or if it just increases an opportunity to block the road entirely by pickup parents who might just sort of park in the road entirely if we're all going the same direction. I would love to see some traffic studies on that. And where I moved is also directly across the street from a school again. And I will say that no one stops at crosswalks. Like no cars stop at crosswalks, even if there's little kids trying to cross the street. I don't know if that's necessarily, this committee or DOT's or the Muni's problem to solve as part of this design, but it's something to keep into consideration if we're going to have westbound moving traffic with a crosswalk, if you're going to have kids darting into traffic to a parent's car that might be on the opposite side of the road. So those are just my observations looking at this as someone who lived there a long time and did get kind of frustrated with that traffic situation. But I love that it has sidewalks. So thank you for this work. And I'm done.
Thank you, Sarah. Looks like we have a member comment in the room from the public. Go ahead, state your name. You got 3 minutes.
Alex Reed, Preliminary Design and Environmental Chief at DOT. I just wanted to clarify something, not just for this project, but projects in general. We select alternatives through the NEPA process. When you go through that process, we're looking at different impacts. It's a wide range of impacts, and we're communicating that to the public as we go through the process. There's a lot of discussion on traffic studies. Sometimes we're doing things to look at an impact, so it's not necessarily an engineering decision. It might not have a safety concern, it might not have a capacity concern, but 50 vehicles per hour going through a street, a local street that didn't formally have it, is an impact to the public. And that is something we would look at within a project. We would make sure to convey that to the public while choosing alternatives, and that would be part of our decision process. So it's a lot of different steps and things we're looking at. Just want to make it clear, like there's a lot of different things we need to look at as we're going through it. And in this project specifically that we're talking about, that would be the thing that we would want to convey to the public is your road is going to change if there's 50 additional vehicles in an hour. And that's something we should make available to everybody. It's part of the process. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alex. Go ahead.
Good Good afternoon, Bob Dole, Director of Community Economic Development. I concur with Mr. Colhase's comments. I'm surrounded by experts more in this field. I am concerned about public process though, and when we take something to the PZC, the Planning and Zoning Commission, and ask the public to participate, I think it's important that they know what the value is and they don't read 5 years later that, oh, it's going back again despite the effort they put in before, where we have looked at specific things. We ask a lot of our community residents to participate in the process. It's important that they know we value what they their input. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the comment. Are there other comments from members of the public? Okay, I don't see any more hands in the room or online. What is the will of the committee?
I've added it to the agenda. I'll go ahead and make a motion to recommend to the policy committee that they request that the project team consider a one-way to be included as part of the study for the 32nd Avenue project. And I would like to, if I can add a comment to that. Maybe I'll wait for the second, if there's a second, before I comment on it.
Okay, do we have a second on the motion?
Can you repeat the motion, Melissa?
The motion was to recommend to the policy committee that they request that the project team include a one-way in the study for the 32nd Avenue project.
So to be clear, you're requesting that it do be included.
Yes, yeah. And I'll clarify this later.
I'll second.
Okay, moved by member Bab, seconded by member Keegan. Is there amendments or discussion?
I'd like to just comment that after the information provided today, which I really appreciate, because I feel that that information is information that is important for the public to understand what the considerations are regarding the timeline, the safety, the potential fire issues, snow storage, etc. So I still would like this to be under consideration of the policy committee, but I have serious reservations about the potential delay. So maybe I can make an amendment to my own motion that if they do consider adding this as part of the study, that they take into consideration the potential delay of up to a year that might entail. So I guess I'm making an amendment to my own motion. I don't know if I need to do that formally.
Yes.
Okay.
To emphasize, so you want, I mean, that will be something I'm sure that will be part of their conversation. But what you're wanting to do is just emphasize that as a consideration?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, we've got a motion to make an amendment. Do we have a second?
Melissa, I think I would rather the amendment include something along, this is Taylor speaking, something along the lines of to reasonably include exploring the alternative, the one-way alternative in a way that also mitigates exorbitant delays to the project. Do you know what? It's a nuance, but I would second something along those lines. I'll second it for discussion so we can talk about it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want that to be a friendly amendment to your amendment?
Yes.
What do you want the friendly amendment to be? Sorry, just to be clear.
So I think the final motion, Taylor, help me with this if you don't mind. The final motion would be to recommend to the policy committee that they request that the 32nd Avenue project team add a one-way alternative to the study for consideration. And that study, that request, Taylor, this is where you need to jump in. That the project team include consideration of the timeline.
Ways to expedite it,
Yeah,
kind of what I heard from member Keegan.
I don't know if it's expediting it. I think it's just including it in a way that reduces impacts on the timeline and the budget. So I think like making the materials associated with the preferred alternatives more robust. And I think if there is a way to justify the one-way option in a way that maybe it doesn't require a full exploration, but brings along all that information that we discussed today to help shed light on why it wasn't, that would also be acceptable. So I think like what would be ideal is that a one-way option is explored, but what would be an acceptable, what would be the next best thing is further clarifying why the one-way option didn't make it to the current stage of consideration. That didn't make it simpler, but that's what.
So rather than continue with that motion, I feel like those are two different things.
I would like to withdraw my motion.
I feel like
So
the recommending that it be considered is one thing. Recommending that the documentation of the prior work that's been done, the explanations, maybe some updated perspective as to why it's not moving forward would be another one. I feel like, I don't feel like we should say choose one of these two necessarily, but if we want to provide the comment, let's say from the technical standpoint, this is where we feel it makes the most sense. And while I've been one who's been like expressing concern about not looking at the one way, I think hearing some of the background, having this conversation, seeing what the process is, I would be fully comfortable supporting the second of saying to the Tech Policy Committee, we support you deciding and documenting why the one way is not moving forward any further and not incorporating it and moving the process forward. I'd be fully comfortable making that, supporting that, even though I and my staff are some of those that have been like questioning the one way just because in my mind, like I said, I didn't know about all this additional work, prior work that had been done and kind of all the reasoning. I hadn't seen necessarily like all of those pieces. I hadn't understood. I mean, the things you mentioned about the fire and why they needed that width and thinking about the passing, the additional explanations and hearing about this was a haul route. I didn't even think about how this was a haul route. That changes the question of, okay, I have more confidence that the two lanes are going to be helpful for continuing that same level of service. So some of those pieces, like for me, it's like, oh, okay, those make a lot more sense. The traffic standpoint, I see we need to tell the public. It's important that they know we shouldn't proceed with a one-way without going back to the public because that is going against the public's understanding. But I feel like the process and what some of our public members stated, I could be behind motion that
a motion.
That.
Have you withdrawn?
I would like to formally withdraw my motion and try again.
Okay, that's what I mean.
But thank you for your patience as I crumble my way through this. So, and the intent, the original motion and my comments were an attempt to address exactly what you had just, said. So, I will probably need help with this as well, but I would like to make a motion to the policy committee to, that they recommend to the project team that the project team include more information about the potential of a one-way alternative and what has been, gosh, see, this is where I'm falling apart again. And the considerations for not including that as one of the alternatives, including some information about the previous project. That the previous project went to PZC, and any additional supportive material that is relevant to the one-way alternative. But Melinda, do you have some suggestions? Because I'd be.
If somebody seconds it, I could maybe offer something totally different.
Or you can offer something totally different without a second.
Okay. Offering something totally different. We have our design team here. We have leadership with DOT. One thing that they can do, like what they did here, is they reference all of the background planning and documents that they use to inform the project. That could be part of their work. I don't think it's a heavy lift to go back and reference the previous, and it was a final. It was a final design study report. This is the draft that went as the application. We have the final. We have the resolution, and you've heard Emma PMNE's conversation that I'm relaying about AFD and street maintenance. If that was all pulled together as far as broad information on what was considered, because at that point, for documentation's sake, I think that is important. It was documented. Why are these constraints still there? And why, as a result, it would be screened out?
So could I offer?
I don't think
what
it
the
would.
amendment would be?
So my discussion would be that it wouldn't have to go to the policy committee to convey something a design team would probably just do normally.
Well, it has to go to the policy committee regardless. It's going to the policy committee regardless, yes.
Oh, I see.
Any of the items that come to the technical advisory committee for action have to go to the policy committee because you guys are
Okay.
just advising.
Okay. All right, so maybe there's no way around it now.
And I'm so glad I'm not on the assembly because I would just completely
You're fine.
fumbled all of the Roberts rules. So if I may amend my motion.
Oh, we need a second.
We don't have actually.
Yeah, we don't have anything on there because there was no second for your
Okay.
motion.
So I have not completed making the motion.
I mean,
You can try to complete it. You can start a new one.
Can I try? I think
Go
I've got
ahead,
it,
Kara.
guys. Okay,
Okay.
I move that the policy committee, or I move to recommend that the policy committee direct staff to revise and clarify the environmental document to more thoroughly explain why a one-way alternative was not included in the preferred analysis.
Second.
Okay, motion has been presented by member Keegan and seconded by member Bab. Is there any discussion or amendments?
question. When it said direct staff, who do you mean? AMAT staff, muni staff, DOT staff? Do you mean
The project team staff.
Go ahead, member Boland.
No, I appreciate all the discussion on this one and a lot of the background too on what was already looked at in the one way. And I think I like the motion that we have here of documented reasoning behind it. I think that's a good way of approaching this, just resourcing, reevaluating something that I think if field maintenance or your maintenance folks aren't going to be able to live with, and fire marshal as opposed to, I don't think it's going to end up being the top alternative in the end of the day. So I defer to the project team. Do you guys have any concerns with the motion as drafted there and including that background?
Something that would be included in the design study.
Yep. Okay. So design study report being where we're
Can you
ultimately.
state your name, please?
Oh, David Gamez with Nosbury Associates.
Thank you.
I was gonna say the same thing. We can definitely document it. DSR is more appropriate than environmental document because we haven't assessed all the different impacts. So, sorry, Alex Reed, DOT. We haven't assessed all the impacts of it, so I wouldn't put it in the environmental document. We have run through all the way, but the DSR, we go through all of those concerns and why it was located early on before we looked at them.
Are you open to a friendly amendment, Taylor, to revise?
You
environmental
betcha.
documents to PSR. And as well, member Bab?
Yes.
Okay, let's make that friendly amendment. So I do appreciate all of this conversation. I appreciate hearing the strong perspective from maintenance. So thank you, Kent and Bob, for your comments to that regard. I think that is really helpful to have that so clear. I feel like some of those things weren't as clear to me till now. So, and I appreciate DOT being welcome or willing, and the project team as well, to just make all of these things much more clear than they have been. So, I appreciate that. Are there other discussion or amendments?
Just thank you to everyone for your patience with my inability to formulate a motion today, and also for the additional information, because I think that has been very helpful for me to understand where we stand with this project.
Okay, thank you, Member Bab.
I'm a queen of mismanaging my motion, so.
Today was not my day.
I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
The information that was discussed here today that provided, can we have, like, what is available that we can provide to the policy committee so they can review it? Is that available for us to provide to them?
I can send it
Okay.
to you. Yes.
Okay.
A link to really the PZC which has all of that. And then the final.
Great. We can put that in the
DSR.
memo.
Okay.
So then the public can see it. So it's all, because it's kind of confusing sometimes for people after the fact to go back and find what was being talked about at the meeting. So we can make whatever you find okay available as part of the memo for the policy committee.
And the information from fire as well, is that included?
That
in
is not included in that. That is gathered to, more recently. I'm sure, that was some of the thoughts that CRW had as far as project management. You look at all of those factors, but it wasn't succinctly defined as far as why that was flagged as far as a one-way.
What might be, do you think that there's a format that we might be able to provide that to the policy committee in?
Can I work with you, Member Kohlhaas, to get the comments you provided today, if the committee members okay, as bullet points to provide to the memo, so the policy committee can go through kind of what the concerns were, so it's not staff trying to regurgitate it and not really understanding and getting it wrong. Is it possible to sit down and work with you on that?
Absolutely.
Great. If everybody's
I have
okay
them.
with it.
Yes.
Would you like that to be amended into the motion so that they're provided with the information from Member Kohlhaas?
Yeah, I think if you want to make a friendly amendment to just say, include the information discussed here today in the memo, that's good enough. We don't have to call anybody individually.
Yeah, those bullet points.
Or, okay, if you don't need it, that's fine too.
I don't need it personally now.
Okay.
but
Bullet points.
As we discussed that, so.
Okay, sounds good. Other discussion or amendments from members? Okay, are there any are there any objections to the motion? Approving the motion, I should say. Okay, hearing none, the motion is approved. Thank you for all of that conversation. Now we will move on to next items of the agenda, which are the informational items. The first item, 6A, the HSIP Minnesota lighting update presentation. We're going to try
I'll
to
start real quick on this and then hand it over to DOT. So just as a reminder, this came up as part of discussion at the policy committee meeting. Providing some information on how things are going for HSIP projects and just getting some more information. So DOT has put together some information and talk about it today. There'll be more at the policy committee as well. So I'll turn it over to Ben at DOT for us.
Thanks, Aaron. No, as Aaron mentioned, this came up at, I believe it was February's policy meeting, and it was in relation to discussion on Fifth Avenue and the pedestrian fencing. And they wanted to look at the results from the Minnesota project that took place, the HSIP project that took place. Construction was between 22 and 23. I think we started 22 and wrapped up in 23. We are pulling the data, so we're going back to 2013 to look at traffic data in that area. We're looking at everything from northbound on 27th down to 32nd. take a look at this. And I think our traffic folks are pointing out to me that crashes are random. They don't happen in very repeatable areas. And so we're looking through the data. We're trying to break out the data on what would have been sort of mitigatable crashes as a result of the barrier. And I think one of the things that we've also identified going through this is that the project as its whole, the scope of it was a lighting project, and the fencing came in as kind of a secondary because of the lighting.
Oh, sorry. Can people hear us online now?
Yes, thank you.
Yep.
Oh, Taylor, can you hear us?
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Aaron,
we
you,
can.
okay.
I can hear you. Okay.
Aaron, you did just mute yourself.
Yes,
you
I'm
probably-
unmuted.
Okay, thank you.
So just a heads up, we're on my computer, so you're gonna have to speak very loudly if you are presenting on an item. So. Can you hear me?
Brad's gonna have to speak up slightly more. We can hear him, but he is breaking in and out.
Let's bring the computer closer. Okay, speak into the microphone on the computer. Thank you.
So I'm not sure where the data, where the audio cut out, but essentially we're working on pulling the data together. We're going from 2013. So this is 9 years prior to construction. And typically on a project like this, we look for getting 3 years worth of data post-construction, but we only have 1 year of verifiable data. We've got 1 year where the data has not been QA'd and QC'd. So we're going to be showing data on this project and in this area, crash data, that we don't have the ideal 3 years worth of data post-construction. And so we're building our data sets. We're trying to put this together in a format that will be digestible for the policy committee, but also meet the needs of what they were trying to accomplish. So that's kind of where we're at with this. So we're looking everywhere from 27th down to 32nd on Minnesota. And then we're also going back 9 years prior to construction, the 2 years of construction, and then the year plus that we have after construction. And so that's kind of where we're headed with it.
Okay, are there any questions or comments from the committee? And if you want, Aaron, I'm logged in too, so we could play the mute unmute option.
Okay. Because I'll have to start sharing from my screen.
Yeah.
Last time it did that, it froze, so I'm a little worried about it. Sorry, as you guys keep going, is the presentation for the next one on the SharePoint? Okay. Now you need to mute. Okay, good.
Are there any questions or comments for the meeting? Are there any comments from the public?
The public hear us.
Are there any comments on this item from the public? Nobody has their hands raised? Yeah, they can hear. Okay. No one's raised their hands on this one.
It's just informational, so we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the Seward Highway Diamond to O'Malley presentation.
Okay, I'm sharing the presentation now. Okay. You guys have it on your iPad, so you want me to change the page or you can just hit the page.
Just a heads up, a lot of the slides will be presented by Julie Trudeau, who's online. So if we have a problem hearing her, or Julie, as we present, just try to speak up a little bit because we're speaking through Aaron's laptop. Quick intro, my name is Ryan Harris, Department of Transportation, Highway Design, Acting Project Manager on the Seward Highway O'Malley to Diamond project. Thank you, AMS Technical Advisory Committee, for having us here to give a brief presentation on the work that we have done up to this point and the work that we are planning to do moving forward to slowly get this project moving again. Quick introductions. Well, myself, and we have Morgan McCammon, Dallas PI lead here with us today. Online, we have Julie Trudeau, who is Jacob's project manager, and I believe we also have Andrew Ohms, our lead traffic engineer from Dal. I do want to preface, I know we only have 10 minutes. I want to preface our presentation a little bit with a few comments. The main focus of this presentation is also to adjust some of the comments that we received in the 2050 MTP Amendment 2. And so just a few preliminary comments prior to Julie taking over and getting into the presentation. First one being, so the project was reset. The purpose and need is being built by stakeholders via an advisory committee that we have put together that we'll get into here in a second. We are in early scoping currently. We're not in design. No design decisions have been made. We're only looking at very preliminary figures, very preliminary, I don't even want to call them alternatives, but different suggestions and ideas that are coming forth through the advisory stakeholder working group. And third, this is not a highway widening project. That's not the project's current identity. That's not the intent of the project moving forward. And that's sort of becoming more clear as we go through our stakeholder working group and advisory committee meetings. So with that said, Julie, if you're online and you could hear us, feel free to take over and we could go to slide 2 and we'll get through our presentation and answer any questions that anyone has at the end.
Sounds good. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Am I speaking loud enough? Great. Okay, thanks. So about a year ago, we decided with DOT that it was time for a fresh start for this project. And in May, we sent out an inquiry to community representation asking for primary and secondary advisory committee members. Quite a few organizations have been participating along the way with us. At the first meeting, we wanted to identify that we're separating ourselves from the previous design and that we needed to take a look at, we also, needs and priorities change over time. And so in this project, having been around for a long time, we identified to our stakeholders that, the needs before may not necessarily align with the needs today. And so through this process, we've allowed our stakeholders to identify key issues that are important today within the project limits, develop solutions, prioritize those and screen those against the need statements. And we did ask for some confidentiality in ensuring trust amongst our stakeholders participating and allowing them to talk freely and share their thoughts and ideas without external criticism. So with that, I think we'll flip to the next slide to share where we've been and where we're headed. So in September, our stakeholder advisory committee met and we went through a brief project history, and then started identifying needs or issues within the corridor. Those issues then were brought to our December meeting, our first December meeting, as emerging themes. And those themes led our stakeholders to developing need statements and a purpose for the project. In our second meeting in December, we also started noodling concepts that would solve those identified emerging themes. And in February, we refined those concepts. So we took those ideas that were Sharpies on aerial photos and we brought those back and refined concepts with our stakeholders. At the end of the third meeting, we decided to take more time with our stakeholders and allow some post-voting. And so we just received, about a week ago, we received all of our voting cards back from our stakeholders. And you'll see the results of those later on in our presentation. We still are planning on attending the Anchorage Transportation Fair, an upcoming public open house in May, and then beginning a context-sensitive solution process. So with that, I think we'll flip to the next slide. Our stakeholders also asked for quite a bit of information to support decision-making. These are all data sets that are located on the Seward Hwy public website under a stakeholder advisory committee page. So this information, whether it's bridge conditions, crash data, origin destination information that was customized to fit the needs and requests of our stakeholders, traffic volumes and traffic volume trends, and speed data. So this is all publicly available information that is in support of the process that we're going through with our stakeholders. Next slide. Ultimately, this is current purpose and need statements. Need 1 is pedestrian and bicycle safety concerns. Need 2, insufficient non-motorized connectivity, both north-south and east-west in the project limits. Need 3 is the use of Brayton, its operations versus its desired use. And need 4 is operational and non-motorized and motorized users and accommodation gaps at our interchanges rather. And then we'll flip to the next slide. So there are over 20.
Quick comment, Julie, to maybe just a little bit more quickly.
Yep. Okay. So 20 concepts were developed by our stakeholders. You can see them here on the screen. 5 for Brayton. Next slide. 6 for Scooter. Next slide. 8 different concepts at O'Malley. Next slide. And for project-wide minor improvements in and around Diamond and O'Malley. Next slide. So here's the results of the voting from our stakeholders. As you can see, our stakeholders put a lot of prioritization into a shared use pathway, a separated shared use pathway with two-way traffic on Brayton, some left turn movement improvements at O'Malley, and then some minor interchange improvements at Diamond and O'Malley. So if we can flip to the next 3 slides. We'll show a two-way concept that our stakeholders developed with a shared use pathway along Brayton. The next slide is the left turn movement improvements at O'Malley interchange. And the next slide, some pedestrian refuge improvements at both Diamond and O'Malley. Next slide. The last thing that we did ask our stakeholders to do was to consider if they were to vote according to fiscal responsibility. And then is there anything else that the stakeholders would like us to consider if funding was not a constraint within the project limits? And you can see the second blue highlighted section here is an undercrossing at Scooter Avenue. And so that was an option that can't afford with the current funding, but was also prioritized by our stakeholders. Next slide. So with that, I apologize for going over a little, but we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Perfect. Thank you, Julie. Are there any questions or comments from the committee?
Chair,
Go
I'm
ahead.
just gonna comment and say thank you for presenting. It's something that I encouraged and asked for, so I think it shows that there's all intent of good transparency, and then hopefully those slides will be available so people can look at in more detail.
Absolutely, yeah, we can make those available.
Did you hear that, Julie?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Other questions or comments from the committee?
So just a question on next steps here. Where's the project team going with the stakeholder engagement? You know, I think a lot of the concept stuff that we have here. I guess continuation of the stakeholder working group meeting and then public involvement beyond that.
Well, the next big thing on our calendar is the transportation fair, obviously. So last week or 2 weeks ago, we received those survey results with the stakeholders voting. I believe that, correct me if I'm wrong, Morgan, we've responded to the stakeholders and share the survey results. And so the next immediate steps is to sort of work through that process, potentially engage the stakeholder working group. I don't think we have anything currently planned to get the entire advisory committee together again. Julie, correct me if I'm wrong there, but immediate next steps is after the transportation fair, we have an open house at the Diamond Center in May to present some of the ideas that came out of the stakeholder working group. So that's our big next PI effort, is that Diamond Center meeting.
Yeah, maybe a couple of minor clarifications there. So yes, we want to take these ideas to the Anchorage Transportation Fair. Our stakeholders encouraged us to do that because we will reach more individuals within the community. We'll be able to seek more input and further refine these prioritized concepts. From there, we'll do a bit of refinement and take that to a public open house. But it's also important to note that we committed to our stakeholders to hold some design charrettes. Those are intended to get a little more in the technical weeds with some of our stakeholders that are very excited about, the width of the shared use pathway, for example, or how we address pedestrian crossings at our interchanges. And so getting into more design aspects as opposed to staying up at this concept level with our stakeholders is also very important to us.
Okay, thank you, Julie and Ryan. Are there any comments from the public? Okay, Alexa, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Alexa Dobson, Bike Anchorage. I would just like to add a little bit of context as a former member of this advisory group. You'll notice that one of those slides, I think, said Cyclists Advisory Group and not Bike Anchorage. And that is because Bike Anchorage was a stakeholder in this group and we withdrew because it became clear that the project was being manipulated to force a highway widening under the guise of a safety project, and our input was not being taken seriously or respected. At the time that Bike Anchorage was part of this advisory group, over at least 6 months, no crash data, traffic volumes, traffic trends, or other core data was provided to the stakeholder group. We all had to ask individually for data that we wanted to see, and it was not provided at the time that Bike Anchorage chose to withdraw. I hope that it has been provided since. But the big thing that I want to bring the tax attention to is this claim that the project is not about highway widening. They're not trying to widen the highway. That is not true. The project team advanced the idea that there was a safety need, with no data presented to support this, for an extra lane to be added to the Seward Highway northbound between O'Malley and Diamond. They claim that this is not a highway widening because it is called an auxiliary lane, but when you add a lane to the highway, it is indeed called a highway widening. So that's something that we really do need to be aware of. You saw the auxiliary lane idea under the concept list there. Another issue that we had was with our objections being I think the best way to describe it is ignored, as in given no response or consideration whatsoever, having to do with the concept for the Seward southbound exit at Diamond involving a slip lane. It's a design well known to be unsafe for both bicyclists and pedestrians, and we were not the only people in the room to make objections to this. Those were ignored. So I do want to reiterate the concerns that I made at the time to the project team, to leadership, that there are serious issues with the ways that this project is being advanced. And I would encourage the TAC to be extremely suspicious of the proposal before you today. The reason why, we wrote in our letter having to do with the MTP. Moving forward, we wanted to get this out on the record and make sure that there was adequate oversight so that this project, which has the potential to improve safety and mobility for pedestrians and bicyclists in the area, does not simply become another opportunity to increase motor normativity and move more cars at high speeds at the expense of bicyclists and pedestrians. So please keep that in mind as you're evaluating this moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexa. Are there any other public comments? Okay, thanks for presenting. I guess I do want to say that I was part of the committee and was at the last meeting where some of the similar things Alexa raised, but I felt like they were addressed in a very positive way. So I'm of a different opinion of the value and the due process. And for the project team, I do want to say thank you for bringing this to us. So thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the letter from FHWA, item 6C, and letter from Alaska DOT on the MPO authorities.
Yes, hello, this is me. This is just a real brief one. So I was asked by a policy committee member to add these items to the agenda, just for your information. And I do want to make a clarification. There's an error on the agenda. That is my fault. I put it as a letter from Alaska DOT and PF. It is not a letter from Alaska DOT and PF. It is a letter from the Department of Law. So I want to make that very clear. I apologize for that error. That was not intended on my part. I was very rushed because a lot of things came in at the very last minute to be added to this agenda. So I have the letter. Let me show it to you all so you can see that it says Department of Law on there. I was just noticing that and I feel real sheepish. So I apologize for anybody that caused some concerns on your part. Again, these are just here for you guys to have them as information. And I'm happy to help take any questions that we can pass to the policy committee or pass along to the Department of Law or FHWA through the policy committee. So if you have any, please let me know. Thank you.
So I guess the question I have next steps. So this is now something that so that everyone's aware. Are there next steps? Is there anything
Not that I'm aware of. I don't really know what the next steps are in this. We're just kind of waiting for this to go through. So depends, I guess, maybe a response from FHWA to this recent letter would be the next step. Outside that, I know there's probably going to be some discussions on the agenda later, and one of the items that'll be talked about is this, on this item. So.
Oh, it looks like I see Lauren Little on. We'll give you
3 minutes.
Member other comments.
Yeah, she's a member of the public, so
Okay.
3 minutes.
Go ahead, you've got 3 minutes.
Thanks, Brad. I just wanted to add, Aaron's absolutely correct. The next thing we would expect in this process is for federal highways to respond to law with whatever that interpretation may be that they're seeking. So it's really just a conversation between Department of Law and federal highways to make sure that we're all reading the CFRs the same as we, apply these CFRs that are open to interpretation to some degree on tip approval decisions. I think that's the main one. I'm still trying to understand exactly how regionally significant projects are viewed, that sort of stuff. So Aaron's just spot on. We're just waiting to hear back from Federal Highways on this letter from law.
Okay, thanks, Lauren. Do we need her to say your name?
Yes, if you could
Please
please.
say your name. That'd be great.
Sorry, Lauren Little, Chief Engineer, Alaska DOT and PF.
Thank you, Lauren. Are there any other comments from the public? Okay, so none. We'll move on to the next information item, which is the MPA boundary discussion, item 6B.
This item was asked to be put onto the agenda at the policy committee. I believe DOT had some information to share regarding the MPA boundary discussion. So I turn it over to whoever at DOT is going to be speaking on this particular item.
Before you jump into that, I see that we have item 6E.
Yeah.
Which looks like it's kind of related. Is it part of the same thing?
It was a separate item that was also asked to be put on the agenda. The idea behind that is to have a discussion about kind of the roadmap for the next, rest of the year, basically for AMATs regarding specific topics. So that item, I'll just say that, 6E is kind of really more for the policy committee to have a discussion on, because a lot of the items are that level, but it's on the agenda since everything that goes to the policy committee, we make sure goes to the TAC. So it's just there if you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns that you want to pass along to the policy committee.
Meaning, do we need to have additional conversation? So as we're going through this, if we do feel like we should stand and stay, something to consider. But it sounds like if E is something we don't need to have discussion on with the policy committee, something to take into any motions to extend if there's interest.
I think some members may have a meeting after this one okay, everything's clear. So there may be some opportunities to stay longer if 6D goes a little longer.
Okay, so we'll turn it over to Raj, other line with yeah, I see that she's got her hand raised, so.
Good, I'm not wrong. All right. Didn't want
Okay.
that wasn't the case.
Go ahead, Lauren.
Thanks. Sorry, guys. It's still a little bit tricky to hear you. So I think I heard my name and you're ready for me to go. Mark, were you able to print those handoffs out of the maps?
So we provided those maps to the committee members on their iPads.
Okay.
So it's there. You can share from your screen if you have anything as well, Lauren.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, we'll go ahead and pull this screen up. So the MPO boundary, we've been working on this with our GIS folks, as well as Department of Law, just kind of working through the proposed and existing MPA boundaries. We've got this nifty GIS site that kind of shows several things. AMATS's boundary was a little bit unique compared to the other two MPOs. Both MVP and FAST pretty strictly followed the US Census line, which is the federally required minimum approved boundary line. And so reviewing theirs was maybe a little more straightforward. AMAT's boundary has a lot of components to it. And so one of the maps that you guys had, the first one is this map one, and of course my screen's going to not cooperate.
Lauren, I'll say really quickly, we provided the original version of this, but it was too late for us to provide the updated version on your iPad. So you'll need to look at the screen, committee members, if you want to see what Lauren's talking about.
And I think even the one you guys have, the critical thing here is, so the gray area is the urbanized area. That is the minimally required federal boundary for the metropolitan planning area. So that area must be incorporated. AMATS has historically also included the Eagle River Chugach area. This is actually small urban area. It's not federally required to be included. And then AMATS has extended all the way up to about mile 30 of the Parks Highway. So quite a bit larger boundary than the federally required minimum. Nothing necessarily wrong with that. The CFR does say at a minimum, you must include the gray. And then going back, to the last, my understanding is 2002 was the last boundary DOT was able to find a governor and MPO approval on. As you can see, really fundamentally not that different from your 2024 boundary in terms of the extents beyond the urbanized area. And of course, back at that time, you did have some non-attainments that have since been resolved. So today is just informational. So we're just trying to show you guys all the things that we've been looking at here at the department as we work through these updated boundary agreements. Now, the other thing that law brought forward were some concerns about the expansions into the Chugach State Park. And those are the map 3 boundaries that you would have gotten. And so if we look at, the Seward Highway, the proposed boundary was including Potter's Marsh, several chunks of the Chugach State Park. Similar situation in Eagle River, where the black is proposed, the blue would be the boundary expansion without, or the current boundary, depending on where the line is, without the new intrusions into the Chugach State Park. And then same for the coastal refuge. So these were areas that law had serious concerns about the inclusions for a variety of reasons, coordination, the lack of ability for these areas to become urbanized. And so law has essentially, their position is that the state cannot approve the boundary expansions into these essentially undevelopable areas as proposed. And so those are kind of the three map things that we've been looking at. And then of course, the AMATS 2002 boundary, we don't have any GIS files. I'm not sure, Aaron, if you've got something in your files somewhere. So that's not included in that GIS link that was provided, but we do have the blue, which is the urbanized area, that this is the minimum that must be included in the boundary. The pink is the small urban area, which is not required to be federally included. And then the red is AMATS's proposed boundary. So purely informational at this point. So just wanted to raise kind of what we've been looking at, what law has weighed in on, and ultimately, just kind of trying to understand. Another thing that we haven't had as easy a time understanding is sort of what's driven some of these expansions. Certainly in the broader context of regional transportation, one thing the law does allow for is inclusion of the full metropolitan statistical area in one MPO's boundaries. So that would actually be the municipality of Anchorage plus the Mat-Su borough. So essentially a consolidation of AMATS and MVP. So just trying to understand, what's driving the larger boundary, understanding those things, and just putting this information in your hands of the data that we've looked at, the feedback we've gotten from law, and some of the options within the CFR that are allowable. And so that's really all I've got on 6D. I did see a question here in the chat. So the reason that we stuck to the park layers that we did was we weren't able to find an official designation for some of those municipality park areas. So it wasn't clear if those could theoretically someday, change designation and be developed. So if there's additional information we need there, please feel free to send it to me. And we're
Lauren,
happy
this
to.
is This is
Yeah.
Taylor. Thanks. I appreciate you answering. In the way that you mean, changing designation, what is the designation you would be speaking of?
So like Chugach State Park is in law as a state park. So, you know, the barriers to it somehow having protections removed and being developed are pretty high. When I talked to the GIS folks that put this map together, they said they weren't able to find something similar for, it's somewhere in here, I feel like, yeah, this green layer here. Find the same type of designation that made it crystal clear, you know, this is a protected zone. And so that was why we kind of left that
Cool.
legally approved line along the old Seward Highway. The legally
Got it.
acceptable, I should say.
So for development, we would, non-motorized facilities would likely be able to be developed on any MOA land that is managed by Parks and Recreation. We do and are trying to further clarify our dedicated parkland, which might be something that we're referring to, which is protected in code. So that is something, if you wanted to connect on, we have something that is not complete, but what has been uploaded are parcels that we are pretty confident are dedicated. So
okay.
If you want a better layer, I can help you with that. If it's not important at this time, that's okay too. So thanks for your answer. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. So any questions on?
Motion to extend.
Move to extend to 3:15.
Moved by member Bab, seconded by member White to extend 3:15. Are there any objections? Hearing none, we're extended 3:15. Okay, so as you're saying, Lauren, you're welcome to, or we're welcome to ask questions. Is that where you were?
Yeah, absolutely.
Are there any questions or comments from the committee? Go ahead, member Beth.
I'm just curious, Lauren, the urbanized areas that are on this map, could you help me understand what the definition of that is? Because this looks different from the minimum boundaries of the urbanized areas that I've seen previously.
Yes, so this information comes to us from the census. And then we work with the census and federal highways to kind of smooth and clean up the line to better fit, actual physical boundaries like roads and those sorts of things. And then this is ultimately approved as the urbanized boundary. So this is a boundary that came from census, was coordinated with the department. I'm not sure the full process that was gone through. That would be our DMIO group that has those coordination efforts on the GIS, and then ultimately was approved by federal highways as the boundary.
So I'm sorry. So this is a proposed boundary. This has not been approved by federal highways, or
They already
blue is
approved
approved.
once.
okay.
The blue and the pink are federally approved boundaries or urbanized areas.
Well, blue is urbanized area, pink is a small urban area. So that's under 50,000. I can't remember what the low end, I can't remember if it's 10 or 25,000 to 49,999 population essentially. Once you hit a population of 50,000, that triggers a requirement for formation of an MPO. And so that's what happened to Matsu on this last census, was they crossed that 50,000 threshold to require becoming an MPO. Other small urban areas in the state, there's one down on the Kenai Peninsula. Juneau is a small urban area. And there is the Service Transportation Block Grant funding, as well as I believe Carbon Reduction Program funding does have sub-allocations for those population groups specifically that come to the department.
Great, thank you.
Are there other questions or comments from the committee? Because I have a few. One, I appreciate being able to see the maps and talk about specifics, having clear documentation about why and what different words mean will be really helpful when this comes to us to make technical suggestions, recommendations, such as the like minimally required areas and also talking the legally acceptable. Are there specific CFRs or other things that prohibit extending into the parks or other things? So understanding the legal opinion there and where that comes from would be really helpful, because if we're already in some of those areas, it would be critical to understand how we are under a legally acceptable situation, especially if what we have has been previously approved by governor, and maybe not the most recent adjustments that were approved by AMATs, but the prior ones even. So just having like clear documentation, understanding of common language and common understanding, and being able to see FHWA language, and also I would be very interested to in FHWA's opinion, because if they approved prior boundary, why would they have approved it if it really was not legally acceptable? So some of those questions I'd be really interested in for any future conversation if it's an action item. Also, as we commented on the full statistical area, that check be considered. Can partial statistical area be considered? Does it have to be the whole thing or nothing? I guess some of those are other questions we don't have right now, but things that I guess came to my mind. I guess one other comment, as we look at the traffic in this area and the purpose of an MPO to have collaborative and coordinated transportation needs. A lot of what comes in and out of Anchorage really uses some of these areas that are in the MPO. And so I could see the value of being able to consider them and contribute to them. There also are the questions of what's the difference if something's outside of the MPO versus inside the MPO? Does that increase or decrease funding? Does that allow for improved collaboration or less collaboration? Does it like how does that function? So that would, I guess, be another point of discussion for this, but don't understand that quite as much. As someone who's here with the municipality, part of me is like, why doesn't just the entire municipality become part of the MPO so that we're not in this confusing MPO separate from municipality sort of conversation? So that question, I guess, I'd be really fascinated to hear why different parts, like what reasoning to not that. So anyway, those are some of my thoughts on future conversation.
Yeah, and I think those are all really good points. One thing to remember, the boundary is between the state and the MPO. And so Federal Highways doesn't really have a role in approval of that outside of if for some reason a boundary was approved that did not include all of the blue, then that would not be a legally compliant boundary. That would be the only place that Federal Highways would maybe have some authority or comment on. The rest of this is really between the state and AMATs to work out what is an acceptable boundary. The CFR, as I said, it defines a minimum boundary. It doesn't necessarily define a maximum boundary, but it does have some language that kind of indicates that there's some intent here towards, true metropolitan planning. I will say, in FAST, a lot of the discussion on the boundary that they chose being very strictly along that, their version of the blue was that they only get so much money. And so the bigger they make their boundary, the more they're diluting that funding, as opposed to if it's outside the boundary, those needs come to the state and they potentially compete for a much larger pool of money. So those were some of the discussions that were happening in FAST. MVP, I think the state really They're a new MPO. And so again, not trying to go too big right out of the gate. But yeah, those are all good points and good things for this group to kind of understand and work through for any new boundary proposals to policy and ultimately the state. And I did drop in the chat the CFR that does define the minimum boundary requirements for folks that are interested. And obviously we've got this GIS that people can kind of toggle on and off and play around with on that. So if you guys want, I can jump really briefly into 6E. I don't think there's a ton there, but I also don't want to stymie this discussion either if there's still some more questions.
Other questions or comments? Before we move to 6E, we will need to have public comments. So
okay.
Any other comments from the committee?
I have something really quickly, just as to clarify. So the minimum MPA boundary shall encompass the entire existing urbanized area, plus the contiguous area expected to be urbanized within the 20-year forecast period for the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. So it's not just the blue that you see on the screen in front of you. Just keep that in mind.
Yeah, and Aaron, that was a question we had. It sounds like the MTP is the responsible document for doing those forecasting. And I wasn't sure if any of the MPOs had actually gone through the effort of determining what an additional 20-year forecast might generate in terms of additional urbanized area. When you look at Eagle River, it really hasn't changed since at least 2002 in terms of approaching an urbanized area threshold. So that was a question that we did have to the MPOs of how you guys do that analysis for the forecasted to be in 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, I'll have to look back and see what they did previously. For us, there wasn't really much to change this go around, so we didn't have to do a whole lot. It was a lot of cleanup, some missing gaps that we wanted to connect, some roads that were half in, half out. So we're like, put them all in. They don't have to be, but that was our recommendation. So we provided all that backup already to everybody on why we made the decisions for staff that came before the TAC and Policy Committee.
Why you made the adjustment from what it was before to what was then through the policy.
Correct.
Versus, I guess, sounds like Lauren's wondering about
past
minimal
versus. I don't know if I have I have that information, and I don't know if I haven't. There's not a whole lot on past efforts, so I don't have much to provide you at this point on why chunks in the white were included, other than they thought at that point it was going to be urbanized in the next 20 years.
That would be something, yes, also.
Yep.
Bring to the conversation. Other questions or comments? Okay, are there any comments from the public? Okay, I don't see any comments from the public. Thank you, Lauren, for addressing item 6D. We do have 6 minutes still that we could jump into item 6E. Do you have suggestions, Aaron? Was that?
Yeah, this came up from the Policy Committee chair. She wanted to make sure that we had a good, robust discussion on things that are up and coming. Some concerns regarding the boundary, which you heard here. There are also some concerns regarding the operating agreement. Sounds like some discussion needs to happen there. So at some point, there may need to be an informational item on a future agenda. And then concerns about the STIP alignment. So some discussions there. How do we make sure that the alignment still works properly? And then just discussions over NHS projects and their inclusion in the documents for the MTP tip. I think a lot of this also speaks to the MPO authority. So some of it may still need to wait until that is resolved, especially for the NHS projects. So I guess at this point, if you guys have any recommendations on when these should come to the agenda or be put on the agenda as an informational item, maybe you can provide that to the policy committee, be like, okay, next month, we want to hear more about the operating agreement. Next month, we want to hear more about NHS. It's kind of up to you guys.
allow this to be a policy committee section or just not?
Lauren, were you gonna present on this one?
Are we talking 6E?
Questions, we don't have too much time for a long presentation.
Yeah, sorry, it sounded like Aaron was suggesting that not be talked about, but yes, I'm happy to touch on 6E. And you guys are really hard to hear. I apologize.
Yeah, sorry, we're on the other side of the room and the laptop is over by Aaron. So it feels like yelling, but I think given that we're already pushing up against our 3:15 and over our typical time, rather than diving into these, I guess my question would be, are there any of these that are more urgent than others to be talking about at a next meeting? Rather than, because there's a lot here. Is there
Yeah.
suggestion or insight or timing that you want to talk to us about at the technical committee? Or are those things that will be better to decide at the policy committee?
Absolutely. I think just a few high level points to convey. We need to have an approved boundary that by December 31st, 2026. So if technical can start kind of, or MAT staff sort of building out a schedule of how we get from where we are today to final approved boundary. There's going to have to be some consultation, potentially tribal consultation, not entirely sure all the steps, but just want to make sure that we kind of have that mapped out and for that boundary approval, and then strategies for addressing that the current policy committee makeup as documented and approved in the operating agreement is not in compliance with Alaska statute. So Alaska statute 19.20.210 does dictate to some extent the makeup of policy committee. It requires 7 voting members. I'm going off by memory at the moment, but it has some requirements that are not currently met in the operating agreement. And so we need to make sure we resolve that as well before that December 31st date. So we're all on the same page moving forward into the new year.
The operating agreement is not required to be done by December of 26. It's the boundary and then the MTP that need to be done.
And just to clarify, my understanding is that the policy committee has already approved a boundary, correct? Is that?
Yeah, we have a policy committee approved boundary, so we're gonna have to wait for the policy committee to make a decision on how they want to move forward next.
For being on the call. Are there any member comments on 6E? Are there any comments from the public on 6E? Seeing none on there, we'll move on to 6F. That's a 30-second.
Yep, should be really quick. So the next meeting, we have complete street topology, possible public release. We'll have to see where we're at with the project then. And then we have a couple of informational items, Academy Vanguard Drive presentation, possibly, and then the Tudor Road Interchange project presentation. There may be one other item I'm forgetting that I got an email on that I haven't responded to, and I apologize for that. And then depending on what the policy committee decides based on the 6E item that we just discussed. So there may be more, I just don't know at this point. So looks like we may have a few less items on the next agenda. We'll see how it goes. So thank you.
If anything's happening in the room, we can't hear it online.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Basically, we're just, it's 3:15, so we are adjourned.
We're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.